Hello, I'm Paul Peterson. I'm the editor-in-chief for Education Next, and today we have with us Nathan Glazer, who's our book review writer, and he has written a review of a book by Gerald Grant that Harvard University Press has published called Hope and Despair in the American City, and the subtitle is Why There Are No Bad Schools in Raleigh, North Carolina. So why are there no bad schools in Raleigh, North Carolina, Nathan?
Well, Gerald Grant, who also is an ex-journalist, and that shows. He census out cities. He finds the main explanation for his thesis that there are no bad schools in Raleigh, as against Syracuse, where there are terrible schools, in the fact that the county in which it's located, Wayne County, has a unified school system in which the central city, with its natural more than average number of black students, low-income students, is combined with the county with its suburban areas, and they do have a system to some degree of busing, and they maintain integrated schools. And the integrated schools to him are, following at least the logic of the thesis, means that the low-income students do better than they normally might be expected to do. The middle-class and upper-income students do not do worse than they would be expected to do, and so overall the schools are attractive. He has to add other things to it. There are magnet programs in the central city schools which attract suburban kids, so they must be very good magnet programs. They do have a degree of busing or of assignment by...
Nathan, this idea has really captured a lot of attention.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people out there are saying this is the model for school reform for the future. We should get away from accountability and standards and school choice, except for maybe magnet schools, and we should be going back to the old remedy of school integration.
Yes.
Isn't this being put back on the national agenda?
Well, it never quite left it fully, but owing to various Supreme Court decisions, the general tenor of the court, by now it has moved to socioeconomic group balancing, which is very close to racial balancing, but it's still different. It's based on...
this would be a wonderful thing if this really works, because we certainly do want a racially homogeneous society, and if we can have a reduction in class distinctions, that is certainly beneficial. So there's no doubt that this is a very powerful proposal if in fact the facts are right. But the question I have for you is, does he have very many facts that these schools are really that wonderful in Raleigh?
He basically has North Carolina state tests, the way all states do now. The percentage going for at adequate or superior, whatever the terms they use, and but he has other facts, and that is facts which may have changed over time, and that is they do seem to have a remarkable number of schools, a substantial number of schools which have very large minority percentages, and which don't flip over or are not flipping over in his account, which normally is what happens. If you get a 40% minority school, a 30% minority school, very likely it's not going to stay that way long.
But he also seems to say, at least in the passage I read, is that the test score achievement gap is closing in Raleigh, that the black kids are doing a lot better, the white kids aren't doing that much worse, and this is really very different from his home state of New York and hometown of Syracuse, New York. So, whenever I hear a story that's that marvelous and that exciting, I always say, okay, what's the evidence? So I looked up on the internet and I found out that the white kids in North Carolina, 95% are both proficient in reading and math, which is really only because the North Carolina proficiency standards are very low. In 2003, they got a D- on proficiency standards, so they are very low. So 95% of the kids are proficient of the white kids, but only 60 9% of the black kids
That's
were.
the national, that's the statewide figure.
No, that's for Wake County. That's for this county. So
is that, well, would you say that's well, I don't know if it's a lower gap than elsewhere. It might be lower than in Syracuse, for example. Or it might be reduced as compared to Syracuse, I would guess, but I'm not sure.
Well, it's hardly.
Yeah,
it's
hardly great, but
hardly great. And if you look at the disadvantaged and advantaged groups, there it's similar line. It's 90% of the kids who are not on free and reduced lunch, and it's about 65% of those that are on free and reduced lunch.
I must say, my view on I don't want to interrupt you, but my view on this issue has been, it's great if it can work, and what it means to work is another question. You raised test scores. Another one is human relations and how kids do better. And there used to be old times of research by Tom Pettigrew and others that the people in such schools will do better in some way in time. My general feeling has been that the overall political pressures in terms of parents wanting to do the best for their kids and white parents wanting to do the best for their kids, but black parents too, it is such that these programs just can't last. Eventually, the pressure to select schools and the pressure to select better schools leads to a kind of sorting out.
Well, now, that, of course, is indicated by the latest school board election in Wake County, where this very county has elected a board that's opposed to this set of policies that have been around for a while. Yeah, well,
the people who went for integration, their hope was always that a decision could be imposed from on top. It could be from the Supreme Court, from national legislation or a state. In some way, a decision could be imposed on the top as a balance, as a pressure against the political pressures which all go the other way. And I think that's unrealistic. Eventually, it just doesn't work. You know, people do take the education of their children very seriously and will keep on pressing.
But in sum, you would say this is a very interesting, readable book, well worth your time, but read it with a little bit of a skeptic's eye.
I think one has to raise such questions. I think I end my review with the possibly pessimistic thought that in the end the improvement in the educational achievement of most or many black children will have to take place in schools which are mostly black. And I don't see how that can be avoided for a long time.
Well, thank you, Nathan. It's been great chatting with you today.
Right.